quite a different direction than most would take this Torah portion. We begin to look at the Hebrew language and the deep, hidden things, as is our tendency here at Manna. We like the hidden manna. We like the things that you don't see on the surface, the things that you have to dig for and work for, because how many of you realize those are the things that are worth it? And those are the things that will sustain you in the days ahead. We've been looking at the concept of the Hebrew language and how the Hebrew language also has music. And it has frequencies. And we've been looking at how it has the power to create and how science itself is now beginning to prove this. Well, how many of you realize Yahweh himself knew this and already did this long ago before any scientist in any lab decided to look at it? Tonight, as we begin to look at this leper that's being cleansed, we've talked about how the leper has to be sprinkled with the water and how you see that on the musical scale, do, re, mi. Well, when he is sprinkled with that water, represented by that musical tone of mi, that tone has a frequency that will cause DNA to be repaired. Scientists are now using this to repair DNA. And you may think, well, what does that have to do with leprosy? We seem to be jumping around. Well, the term Metzora in Hebrew attaches all this together for us. The word Metzora has the mem prefix. It means from. On the end of this word, you see the term Zora. It's a play on words in the Hebrew language with the word zera, meaning seed. In other words, from the seed, from the DNA, is the cause of this leprosy. And from his Torah, from his law, the DNA would be changed. It would be repaired, and therefore the leper would be healed. Now you can begin to see why it's important that we learn the Torah, that we put the Torah inside of us, because it's the Torah that will repair your DNA, and it'll cause your leprosy to be healed. Without the Torah inside of you, your leprosy will continue and eat away. This particular frequency of the tone ray was 417, and we've looked at it, and we looked at how it would cause change and it would cause resonation. But that's not the only thing. You can take this number, 417, and you can plug it in to the Hebrew language. We know that every letter has a numerical value. It has a number assigned to it. So therefore, words, you can add these numbers together and you can get a value for this word, referred to as the gematria. Well, the gematria of the word zaith, or olive, equals 417. Strong's number 2132. The olive is where the oil was extracted from. And the oil also plays an important role in the cleansing of this leper. In Leviticus chapter 14, verse 17, it says, "And of the rest of the oil that is in his hand shall the priest put upon the tip of the right ear of him that is to be cleansed, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the great toe of his right foot, upon the blood of the trespass offering. And the remnant of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall pour upon the head of him that is to be cleansed, and the priest shall make an atonement for him before Yahweh." The oil is important here. So as we begin to look at this frequency, it attaches into this cleansing of the leper. It goes hand in hand. Well, as I was looking at this, we know that the word oil in Hebrew is Strong's number 8081, shemen. It means fat or oil, but it carries the idea of fertility as well. It comes from the root number 8080, shaman, which means to be or become fat or to grow fat. And I have in parentheses a question for you, perhaps pregnant. The word shemen is actually where we get our English word semen, the seed of the man. It's derived from this word in the Hebrew. In other words, he would heal their leprosy by repairing their DNA. We've already looked at that. We understand it. How would he repair their DNA? Through his language and also by planting his seed, his DNA within them. And as this oil is applied to the leper, that's what it's symbolic of. It's the seed of Yahweh covering the leper now, being poured upon his head. His DNA is repaired. He's restored. He's changed. He's no longer who he was before. But before this oil is ever applied to the leper, you already have hinted at what's about to take place in this ceremony. He already begins to show you the importance of this cleansing of the leper because they bring 2 birds to be sacrificed. In Leviticus chapter 14, starting in verse 4, it says, "Then shall the priest command to take for him that is to be cleansed 2 birds alive and clean, and cedar wood and scarlet and hyssop. And if you go through the process, one bird is killed and one is set free and is let go. And that should remind you, the same thing happens on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. The scapegoat is let go when the other one is sacrificed. So now not only does this cleansing of the leper deal with us in a nidah condition, but it also connects us to the Day of Atonement, to Yom Kippur. Why is that important? What happens on Yom Kippur? Well, the high priest goes into the Holy of Holies before Yahweh. He goes into the intimate place. So now you can see why this leper has to be cleansed. This leper represents the bride. And on the Day of Atonement, she's to go into the holy place. She's to go into the intimate place to be with her groom. But if she is nidah, she is not allowed. And so he cleanses her and he prepares her to enter into this time with him on the Day of Atonement, the day of at-one-ment. The word bird here, they're to bring two birds, is Strong's number 6833, Zippor. It means bird or fowl. It happens to be the root of the name Zipporah, who is the wife of Moses, the one from whom living water is drawn. And if you've heard any of the previous teachings upon this woman, Zipporah, you know that she represents the nidah bride. She represents one that is rebellious, one who is unclean. So now, not only is this leper, but now we see the same shadow picture in Zipporah, an unclean, rebellious, stiff-necked, hard-hearted bride. Breaking apart this word bird that's to be brought in order for this to be cleansed, you have the Zadi, Pei, Vav, Resh. The first two letters of this word, Zippor, the Zadi, Pei, form the two-letter root meaning to flow, to overflow, to engulf. What is she being overflowed with? That Vav Resh forms the word or in Hebrew, meaning light. She is being engulfed and caused to overflow with the light of Yahweh. Before the oil is ever applied to her, when she brings these two birds, this is what it's representing. She fully understands what's about to take place. His light is about to come upon her. And this is exactly what happens when the oil is applied to this leper. It's the restoration of this nidah bride. It's the restoration of this fallen woman back to her original state when she was clothed with the light of Yahweh in the Garden of Eden before she first became nidah by committing adultery. This oil was applied to the tip of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the great toe of the right foot, and then it was poured upon the head. There is no coincidence, and there is nothing for filler material within the Torah. Everything has a purpose. So when they would apply this oil in this particular manner, it's a reason behind it. There is something Yahweh is trying to show us and teach us. It just so happens that this same process, these same spots where this oil is applied, is also where the blood of the ram of consecration was applied to the priests when they were being called forth and consecrated by Yahweh. In Leviticus chapter 8, verse 23, it says, "And he slew it, and Moses took up the blood of it, and put it upon the tip of Aaron's right ear, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the great toe of his right foot." Every single step of this cleansing process teaches you something. It tells you who you are and who your groom is, and it's letting you know how this relationship between the both of you are working. More and more is revealed. It is the nidah bride who is supposed to be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation, we're told in Exodus 19:6, but instead she's accepted the wrong seed. That's why the cleansing of the leper also mirrors the process of the priest being consecrated, because she was supposed to be the priest unto him. The priest went into the tabernacle, representing the man laid out upon the earth. They were the ones that went and ministered, and they represent the bride. So here you see this mirror again. Just like in the Garden of Eden, when she first accepts this wrong seed. So the cleansing of the leprous bride mirrors that of the priest's consecration. She's being called as the one that's going to minister to him. And who are the priests? What tribe are they from? They're from Levi. If you break that word Levi apart, you have the word lev, which means heart, and the yod suffix meaning my heart. That's who's being cleansed. That's who's being called to minister unto him, my heart. If you're not his heart, if you're not one that is interested in that, then you're not going to be cleansed and you're not being called. Now let's begin to look at these words in the Hebrew language, because every single one of them helps. It builds upon the next one. First, look at the word tip. The tip of the right ear is where this oil was applied. The word tip is Strong's number 8571, tanuk. It means tip, lobe of the ear, and it's only used when referring to the priest and the lepers who are being cleansed within these two ceremonies. It comes from the root, though, number 594, anak, which means plummet, plumb, lead weight, or a plumb line, a line used to determine verticality or straightness. And here comes the problem. This is why most of us will choose to remain lepers. Because as long as you're a leper, as long as you're in this leprosy state, you don't have to line up. Your straightness is not being measured. But as soon as you come to be cleansed, as soon as you come to have this oil applied to you, the first thing that happens is you're measured. He measures how well you're lining up. And before this oil is applied, how straight you are will determine whether it comes on or not. The tip of the ear. The word ear is Strong's number 241. Ozen, it means ear, but it can also mean to uncover the ear, to reveal something. The receiver of divine revelation. It pictures someone that would pull back the hair from their ear in order to hear something. It comes from the root number 238, azan, which means to hear or to listen, but it's a cognate of number 239, azan, which means to weigh, to test, to prove and consider. And it's from these roots that we get the term mozanim, the scales or the balances. So you can see that every step of this cleansing process requires you to be weighed in the balance. It requires you to be measured, to be inspected. You're being looked at for these spots to see if you're truly ready to be cleansed or not. And it's interesting that as we look at this, the word ear, meaning to pull back, to have something revealed to you, he's trying to connect the dots for you that what you hear becomes seed. What you hear will affect your DNA. And if you don't believe it, ask Adam and Eve. When they first uncovered their ears to listen to the serpent, what happened to them? They got put in an Edah compromised condition. Their DNA was changed. They lost the light. What you listen to will affect your DNA. It's seed within your mind. As the leper goes through this process, we understand that they're being weighed in the balance. They're being tested. They're being considered. They're being inspected. Their straightness is being measured to see whether they will line up or not. So now we must beg the question, what are they lining up for? What are they being cleansed for? What is the purpose of this process? You will find that in the word for thumb and toe. It's the same word in the Hebrew language. And anytime he repeats himself, it's for emphasis. So he chooses this word and he uses it twice. And there's actually a typo in my notes, so ignore that. It's Strong's number 931, bohin. It means thumb or great big toe. And the gematria is not 13. Told you, over-medicated myself. That is an error. But this word bohin, if you were to break it apart in the Hebrew language, you have the word bo, which means come. Then you have the word hin, which should be familiar to you if you take the Hebrew class here. It means they, and it's the feminine form of they. In other words, they will come. What does it mean? He's telling you that what they're being tested for, what they're being inspected for, is to see if they fit the requirements of being called as the bride. The one who is allowed to come, the one that will come and be echad with her groom. Will you be one that is called? Will you be one that is allowed to bow, come forth, come hither, go past the veil? The next question we must ask in this process is, how does this testing come about? We now understand that we are being weighed in the balance. We know why. It's to see if we'll line up to be part of the bride. But how will this testing happen? Well, you see that in the word head. Strong's number 7218, the last place that the oil was poured upon. It's the word rosh. It means head, beginning. And we already looked at it earlier. It comes from the root meaning to shake. In other words, the testing comes in the shaking, just like what happened in the beginning in Bereshit. Once again, you're going to be shaken. As I was looking at this earlier, we mentioned a verse in Psalms that we were going to come back to. And it helped us to understand how powerful the voice of the Lord was, how it would break the cedars. Well, we're going to inspect that verse tonight. Because not only does his voice break the cedars, but this cedar is also used in this process of the cleansing of